The stomach releases about 3 liters of gastric juice per day. The release of the gastric juice is controlled by hormones and the neurotransmitter acetylcholine. Let's begin by looking at hormonal control. We'll start with gastrin. Gastrin is released from enteroendocrine cells. The stimulus for the release of gastrin is the presence of proteins or polypeptides in the stomach, as well as an increased pH. Proteins function as buffers to bind with hydrogen ions, thereby increasing the pH. There are several actions of gastrin. Gastrin triggers parietal cells to release hydrochloric acid. The hydrochloric acid is necessary to convert the pepsinogen into pepsin. Remember, pepsin is an enzyme that breaks proteins down into large polypeptides. Gastrin also stimulates histamine-secreting cells to release histamine, which will then go to the parietal cells and stimulate them to release hydrochloric acid. Gastrin also stimulates the smooth muscles in the walls of the small intestine to contract. The ileocecal valve between the ileum, the distal portion of the small intestine, and the cecum, the first portion of the large intestine, relaxes, allowing the contents of the ileum to move into the cecum. Lastly, gastrin stimulates the smooth muscles in the walls of the large intestine or colon to contract. These contractions are called mass movements. They are long, strong, powerful contractions that move the feces into the rectum. The paracrine histamine is released when food enters the stomach. It stimulates the parietal cells to release hydrochloric acid. When the chyme enters the duodenum, duodenomucosal cells release secretin and CCK. Secretin and CCK inhibit gastric secretions. Now let's look at neural control for the release of gastric secretions. When food enters the stomach, the wall of the stomach is stretched. This distension triggers stretch receptors located within the wall. In response to this, parasympathetic fibers release the neurotransmitter acetylcholine. Acetylcholine then will go to the parietal cells and stimulate the release of hydrochloric acid. Remember, the hydrochloric acid is necessary to convert pepsinogen into pepsin. Let's review. What are the 3 chemicals that stimulate the release of hydrochloric acid? Recall gastrin, histamine, and now acetylcholine are responsible for the release of hydrochloric acid. Their target will be the parietal cells. Take some time to look at antihistamines and try to determine why they are used to treat some ulcers. Keep in mind, these are antihistamines. And lastly, what digestion begins in the stomach? Remember, protein digestion begins in the stomach, where proteins are broken down into large polypeptides.